Well, it's that time of the week again, time to talk tech. From the newest piece of cyber legislation designed to keep copyright pirates at bay to potential government-mandated internet backdoors designed to monitor your moves online and beyond. There's a lot happening in the world of technology, so let's get right to it. Joining me now to break it all down from LA is the founder of SSP Blue, Himanshu Nigam, and RT Zone, Andrew Blake. Thank you guys for joining me. Let's begin by talking about the fact that earlier this week, the New York Times reported that the White House was close to actually supporting a measure backed by the FBI that would force all internet companies in the U.S. to actually provide a way for the government to conduct undetectable surveillance. So essentially, it's making it easier for them to wiretap people. Himu, I'll start with you. How exactly would this work?
Okay, so the way to look at it is right now, when you have the telephone, government can wiretap telephone conversations. What's missing is that technical capability on many of the internet platforms that exist and that are very popular today. So what the government is saying is, we don't really care how you do it, but just build in that capability. Otherwise, the other possibility, and this is why it's actually a positive development, is that the government could come with a piece of technology and say, we're going to plug this into your network, and who knows that could create chaos if they didn't actually know how it worked. And so it's actually a good thing that they're doing it and letting the company decide.
Andrew, tell me what this means for users like you and me, and also, is there any way to protect ourselves from it?
No, in fact, this would actually increase the likelihood you're going to be more vulnerable for attacks. So by actually mandating that companies create these backdoors so that the government can come in and spy, snoop around, be able to watch whatever they want, that back door is going to be open. So hackers, who we're being told are the nation's #1 enemy, are going to be able to exploit this more or less as long as they can outsmart the U.S. government, which, if history is any precedent, is something that has happened quite often. But no, for regular users like you and I, so our communications online, right now there's ways to eavesdrop on that stuff, and there's ways to take communication that's already stored, old emails and stuff like this, but this would essentially create a real-time monitoring method for the government. So anytime you're talking to someone in a Facebook chat, in GChat, on AOL, anything like that, if you are under investigation, the authorities are going to be able to see that information in real time and respond within moments if they feel like it's necessary. So for people like us, it's just saying that if you're going to be under investigation, nothing you do is going to be safe at all as long as it's connected to the internet.
That's an interesting...
Actually, let me just add a quick point on that, because Andrew made a point. If you're under investigation, the reality of this is that you still have to, as a government agent, go through all the requirements that are present when you want to conduct what's actually wiretapping capability, or instill wiretapping capabilities on a person that you're investigating, which is different than saying that any willy-nilly Joe Schmo out there is going to get investigated and therefore capable of being wiretapped. The reality is the government has to go through so many hurdles to get to that point. But the good part of that is if they're investigating, say, a terrorist or somebody who's destined on bringing down the Empire State Building, and they're using a platform that didn't have it, now the government has required that you will have it if this legislation passes.
But at the same time, though, like I agree to points to that, but at the same time, there's already measures in place right now that remove a lot of these hurdles and a lot of these obstacles when it comes to different federal investigations. So when it comes down to obtaining some sort of stored communication, whether it's the entire bulk of a message or just a subject line, to and from line, stuff like that, there's all sorts of different rules about what the government can get and how easy it is to get it. And when it comes to getting a search warrant, for example, you have to actually go to a judge, have a judge sign off. You have to show probable cause, and there's a little bit of judiciary oversight. But when it comes to getting some data, actually all it requires is an administrative subpoena, and that's something that only a prosecutor can sign. And it's actually, there's calls to reform these rules because it's so easy for some information and not others to be out there. But this would update the CALIA laws and just make it a bit easier for law enforcement in particular.
Well, let's talk about that, gentlemen. At the same time that all of this news broke, documents released by the ACLU as a result of the Freedom of Information Act request actually revealed that the FBI already claims a right to search your email. So this is just the way of the future, is it not, Himanshu?
Well, there's definitely no question that you have to keep up with the criminals. And if we build new technologies and we don't build investigative capabilities that parallel that, at the end of the day, citizens of America, or for that matter, any country, are going to say if there was an attack or there was something very horrible that happened, where was the government? Why weren't they doing something? And I think we have to balance the privacy rights of the good citizens versus the rights of individuals who are being investigated for horrible, potentially horrible crimes. And I think that's going to be something that's historically been done in the past. It's not going to change today. The debates are going to rage on. And at some point, whatever legislation comes out will end up being balanced, but at the same time, it will be continuously monitored by people like the ACLU as well as by technology companies. And that balance and that discussion is actually a great thing to have inside the Beltway.
Let's move on. The Deter Cyber Theft Act was actually put up for debate this week. This week, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle actually introduced this new piece of cyber legislation to protect commercial data. That would be patents and copyrights and whatnot. So from forcing hackers and governments, Andrew, why don't you talk about how lawmakers are estimating this bill and what it would mean and what they need? You know,
it's actually, we're going to learn a lot through this, because we've seen so many efforts in the last few years to put in place different cybersecurity laws, different computer legislation, domestically speaking. And we've had so many obstacles. I mean, look at things like CISPA, SOPA, PIPA, these things that just involve any sort of internet legislation at all have come under so much scrutiny. They've just been shot down. So if we're actually going to try to make an effort to establish rules that are going to allegedly go after foreign hackers, we can really find out here, you know, what is the priority of the U.S. government? Are they as concerned about these, you know, so-called cyber terrorists in China and Iran as they say they are, or are they more concerned about the U.S. computer criminals? Because there's lots of calls to make additions, amendments, and changes to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act here locally in the United States. But if Congress can actually move ahead and pass legislation this quickly that's going to actually change the way that international relations work in terms of cybersecurity, I think it's going to be really telling about the way Congress works.
It's very interesting. There's so much that is going on right now. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end the conversation there. We didn't even get to talk about the quantum internet, but I'll refer people to RT.com for the latest on that. RT producer Andrew Blake and founder of the SSP Blue, Himanshu Nigam, joining us from LA.
Thank you.